Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, a mass protest for a new political order in Brazil. But do they represent what most Brazilians want? So there have been protests in Brazil for months now, and rallies around the country for President Dilma today. Malika Bilal, what are you seeing? How's the conversation going online?
Well, people are explaining to us, the stream, why people on so many sides of the political spectrum are unhappy with the way things are. This is one person's take on Twitter. She says there are layoffs, inflation, personal debt. In many cities, people are facing insecurity, and in some areas, they're facing water shortages. So our question for you is, what should be done? We want you to weigh in with that using hashtag AJStream.
My name is Mauricio Salvarezzi. I am a Brazilian blogger and I am on the stream.
Supporters of the Brazilian president are in the streets this week for what they're calling pro-democracy rallies. It's their response to mass protests demanding Dilma Rousseff's impeachment. Rousseff, in her second term, has an 8% approval rating, and that's the lowest of any president since Brazil emerged from military rule 3 decades ago. Most Brazilians think her government's a disaster due to a tanking economy and massive corruption scandal, but they don't all agree on who should be in charge. Working classes with a taste for socialism were the backbone of Rousseff's Workers' Party, but they say it's lost touch with the people. And middle-class capitalists, well, they say it's time for a right-wing leader in the presidential palace. So what difference will these protests make? With us to talk about this in Sao Paulo, we have Fabio Osterman. He's an activist with the Free Brazil movement, one of the main protest organizers. In Rio de Janeiro, Bruno Tortora is a journalist and activist, and Rodrigo Nunes is a lecturer at Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro. And we also asked the Brazilian embassy and the government to join the conversation, but they haven't responded to our requests. So, gentlemen, have a look here on my laptop. I'm going to start here with a public opinion poll. The source is the Data for Her in Brazil. And it's a public opinion poll of Dilma Rousseff after 4 years and 7 months in office. So 8% are saying that your president is doing a great job, 2% are saying okay, 71% very bad or bad, and 1% just have nothing to say about this at all. Fabio, where are you in this percentage breakdown?
I'm probably among the 71% who think her government is a really bad government, and it's a government that has lost most of what it had of legitimate in Brazil nowadays. Not only because of the state of the economy, but also for several wrongdoings her government has been putting in place in the recent months.
So is this a leadership question and people out on the streets because of the way that President Dilma Rousseff is leading the country, or is there more to it?
I think it has a lot to do with that, of course. But it's definitely not a matter of left and right-wing factions disputing power. This is a matter of her government and several of her party members being accused of several crimes, most of them involving the corruption scandal of Petrobras. But specifically, her government is being trialed right now for infringing Brazilian fiscal responsibility law, which is something very serious and is something that Brazilian people should not let go unpunished. And this is one of the main reasons why we have been going to the streets.
But not literally on trial, though, Bruno. Is the administration right now? This approval rating, is this a major problem? How many people in Brazil are just literally unhappy with the way the government is running the country?
A lot of people, and I include myself among those people. I'm not happy with the way that she's governing, even before her re-election. But I disagree with Fabio regarding the solution to this problem. I'm not for the impeachment, although I also agree with him that there's a lot of wrongdoing, but there's no legal basis to take her out of office, because she personally is not implied in the wrongdoing that he's been talking about. And that's, I think, it's a menace to the stability of the country if we started to impeach people because polls, right? We just had an election, and she ought to do her job.
So, Rodrigo, I want to bring you in here because there is an explanation from some people on why people are unhappy. This is Bernardo, and he said, since re-election, the PT, the Workers' Party, the ruling party, has carried out precisely what it accused the opposition of doing: austerity and reversal of rights. And Bernardo goes on to say, the PT's biggest failure is having turned its back on its social base, on social movement. So, Rodrigo, do you think that that's a valid sentiment? And is that what you hear from people, that the party is no longer representing the people that it came into power on?
Oh, absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense. But again,
All right. We'll come back. Hopefully, Rodrigo, we'll be able to get a better connection with you. We sort of hear you, but not quite. Let me show you here what's been going on in the last couple of days. So this is where we're at right now. We've got rallies for President Dilma Rousseff. These are the rallies that are happening around the next 24 hours or so. And then just from earlier on, we got this little bit here, which are rallies in defense or in support of President Dilma Rousseff. Have a listen to this. So, Rodrigo, when you see that, what do you make of that?
We have to understand that the 71% is very diverse, and the protests against the government that happened over the weekend represent a very specific, very small subset. All you have to do is look at the numbers. There's 71% of people who are dissatisfied with the government, and then there was less than 1% people, and a relatively homogeneous crowd of people socially who were protesting over the weekend. So there are several reasons. There's the deterioration of the economy over the last year or so. There is the fact that was pointed out by Bernardo on Twitter, that since the elections, PT has gone on to implement exactly the opposite of what it said that everyone else but PT was going to do. There is the disastrous handling of the 2013 protests, which is still the elephant in the room that no one in the political system will talk about. And then there is also corruption. But I wouldn't say corruption is the only thing that explains why people are dissatisfied. And I think there are several people who are dissatisfied for very different reasons.
Steve Bruno, I see you nodding. Jump in.
I absolutely agree with what he said, because I think that 71% has to be analyzed through a very diverse perspective, because she is indeed doing a government now, and she's implementing policies that was not her campaign. So that, I think, is the main reason why people, at least on the left, which is the place where I identify and I come, are part of the 71%. I would say that people are unhappy with a lot of things, and the corruption scandal, although it's very important, and the Workers' Party is definitely in the center of this. It's a much more a structural problem in the electoral system in the country, and that thing is not being necessarily talked about among those people who are on the streets on Sunday asking for the impeachment of the president.
Let me just mention that the Petrobras scandal Petrobras is the major state-owned energy company in Brazil, and right now there's an ongoing investigation about bribes being exchanged for contracts. So that's an ongoing investigation. When we talk about corruption or a major scandal, that's what we're referring to. Malika.
And of course, people online are talking about how some of the ruling party members have been arrested in that scandal, but President Dilma Rousseff has not been. So this is Nicole on Twitter, and she says, I don't want the president impeached unless concrete evidence is found that she was part of the corruption scandals. Here's another person here in a video comment who explains why he also doesn't really want impeachment to happen. This is Eduardo. Fabio, have a listen.
I didn't vote for President Dilma last year, but I think impeachment is the worst thing Brazil could have now, because the opposition is formed by not comfortable politicians, and the president of the Congress is representative of the most conservative Brazilians, fora Cunha.
So Fabio, of course, he ended that in Portuguese, calling for the impeachment of the head of the House of Representatives instead. So what do you think about that?
Right. Just to get back to what my colleagues were saying, I think there's a widespread sense that President Dilma deliberately, during elections, lied about her purposes when being reelected, and lied specifically about the fiscal situation of Brazil, and which is something that she knew, or at least she should have known, that she would be facing when she was reelected.
Fabio, how do you know that? I mean, that's a big allegation. What are you basing that on?
Oh, she was the president of Brazil for 4 years, and she denied basic economic facts during the elections, such as the fact that the government needed reforms, which, for instance, she's doing now. Some reforms specifically regarding labor laws. I'm not against these reforms. What I am against is lying to the people only to get their votes, and painting your opponent as someone who will do everything that you know you have to do.
Right.
But besides that,
isn't that just called Fabio? Isn't that just called politics? Right.
I don't think we should settle for something so small in moral terms.
Right.
I think we should aspire for something higher than that, than just to accept stuff like that to happen to us on a daily basis without taking any action. And if I can just complete what this last manifestation was saying about the impeachment of President Dilma. Some people say that there are no concrete evidences of her involvement with Petrobras scandal, or even on committing a fiscal crime, a crime of fiscal responsibility. But the thing is, there's, according to Brazilian law, there's a specific body that's designed to judge the president in cases of impeachment, which is the Senate. The House of Representatives is in charge of authorizing the Senate to judge her.
All right, so Fabio, let's just cut to the chase, because we're doing this program for the entire world here, so I don't want to dig too deep into domestic Brazilian politics here. But is there any way that your president could be impeached? She is serving her second term. She's done nothing illegal as far as investigations are concerned so far. Let me bring in Bruno. Bruno, you're a journalist. Is this even possible, what some people are asking for?
I don't think it's legally possible. It might be politically possible, which is not a good
impeachment is a political judgment. Let's not forget that.
It is a political judgment after she's been indicted with enough evidence of a wrongdoing. It cannot be based just on the fact that the Congress is basically opposing her, or she's weak.
So let me just ask you this very quickly, because then we can move on. Is this impeachment even close right now, Bruno?
I think it's not close as it was, I would say, a couple of weeks ago. I think she's much more stable now for different reasons that I'm not sure if we can explore now. But I think it's going further from reality.
All right, Fabio,
as the time passes.
Impeachment close or not? Separate from your wish, is it actually close, practically close?
In order to open the impeachment process in the House of Representatives in Brazil, we're required to have 2/3 of the deputies, of the federal deputies.
Right.
There are some estimates currently of course, informal estimates because it's something that you just can't know until the voting goes to the floor. That says that the final number, which will be 342 representatives, is around 30 to 50 short.
All right.
So,
but the impeachment is
So
not
then,
up
let me
close.
just interpret for you, Bruno and Fabio, we're not that close. So moving on. Malika.
Well, I want to push us to something that a lot of people online want us to bring attention to, and it's something that we touched on in this conversation a little bit earlier, but it's about who the representatives of these protesters are, who they are representing. So this is one person on Twitter. He says, these protesters don't represent me, the poor or the workers. They're rich, they're well-educated, they're white, and this person says they want a dictatorial regime. This next person, this is Jorge, and he sent a picture. This is of a protest in March, but it's similar to the protests we're seeing these days. This is photo of a March 15th protest, and you can see in the picture, you see people of color standing on the sides as those who march are clearly of a different ethnic makeup. So Fabio, when you see criticism like this, people saying these protesters don't represent me, they're upper middle class, they're elite, what do you make of that?
I feel very sorry for people who make criticism about the social condition or even the color of the skin of people who are going to the streets to protest, as if this was the important matter. When I think the important matter is, what are these people protesting for? Some people argue that there are some people protesting for the coming back of military dictatorship. I think this is just nonsense. You will always, in protests like the one we seen this last Sunday, specifically in São Paulo, where I was, where we had more than 1 million people protesting at Paulista Avenue. I mean, out of 1 million people, of course you will find all sorts of demands, all sorts of claims. But if you try to paint situation as if those who ask for military dictatorship to be representatives of the whole, that will seem to be kind of dishonest, in my opinion.
Well, Fabio, but I think it's not representative of the whole, for sure. But it's not a small group. There's a lot of trucks, people with microphones. Well, I was on the streets on Sunday to cover it. It was a lot of people, but it wasn't a million people for sure in Avenida Paulista. But that's not the point. The point is there was a lot of people on the cars, a lot of people that I talked to. But I think the issue is, how can you feel comfortable marching among people who are asking for a military coup? That's what I'm
not marching along with people who are demanding for a military dictatorship.
There was there's a lot of people there, and everyone was very comfortable being around a lot of
Bruno, can I just show something as you mentioned this, because again this is an independent freelance journalist, Bruce Douglas. We've been using quite a few of his tweets because he was out reporting as you were reporting, and this, look here, Armed Forces We Need You, he does a translation here. This was Sunday. So some people are asking,
and this is Rio, right?
Yeah, maybe upturning of the political process that you have right now. Let me just bring back in Rodrigo. Hello, Rodrigo.
Oh,
where's you want at? Yeah.
Well, I think I'd say obviously this is happening. The pictures don't lie.
Yeah.
But this is a bit of a red herring as well, in the sense that what you will.
We keep trying. 10 out of 10 for trying, right? Let me show you back here. This is Sunday. Rodrigo was trying to tell us about Sunday. One day we will get back to Rodrigo, but right now, let me just play you a little clip of this. Bruno, you were there. Tell me what's happening here. Bruno, there's choreography, there's flash mobs. This is incredibly well organized and, dare I say, rich
welcome to Brazil.
Protest, right?
Yeah,
very comfortable, nice conditions. People are having a good time.
People are having a good time there, and they seem to agree a lot, even on the movements that they taking part in.
Right.
Yeah, this is funny.
Oh, people are having fun. I don't see a problem with that. I don't
see a problem with that
too. Of
too.
those people, specifically because I can't dance, but I don't see a problem on them having fun and trying to protest in favor of something they believe in or against something that they totally distrust in the ways that they feel like protesting.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Malika, because we've got a few more voices here from our community wanting to join in. Malika, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to read this tweet and then follow it up with a video comment, because this is from Kampa, who says, look, there's a big push from the wealthiest sectors of society, a point that we've mentioned earlier, to get rid of Dilma and her moderately leftist program. It's that moderately leftist program that I want to focus on, because there's a video comment from Jorge who says, once that happens, then what? So I want you all to have a listen to this.
Even though I have some disagreements with certain political choice of Workers' Party, I don't see any political group or a party that could face this conservative wave we've seen recently in the Congress and in certain part of society better than the Workers' Party, and be at the same time a channel for pressure and for the continuation of the social agenda we've seen recently in Brazil.
So, Rodrigo, going to go to you with that. He talked about what could come next, whether or not she's impeached. Is there really even an alternative?
Well, then we get to the really interesting question, because what's happening is you have to understand you need to go back a little further to the re-democratization process, where basically since the 90s, the Brazilian political system has been an amorphous mass of parties that represent only particular interests, and sometimes only the interests of their own politicians, every now and then given some shape and project by either PT or the Social Democrats. What we're seeing now is the end of the capacity of both the opposition and PT to give this amorphous mass a project. It's not clear what PT's project is anymore. And it's not clear that they still have a coherent narrative of what they intend to do next. So that takes us
Rodrigo,
back to...
I just wanted to ask you this then. I'm going to show you this picture here and then get right back to you. This is President Dilma Rousseff before she was president. This is back in the 1970s when she herself was out on the street protesting a military dictatorship at the time. And then fast forward to earlier on this year when there were massive protests. In fact, I believe the biggest ones that Brazil has ever had. And here is her status, feeling chill. She knows what it's like to be out on the streets. In fact, she probably quite enjoys it. So if you're saying she doesn't have a coherent narrative, what are you hearing that she's going to do next? How is she reacting to these protests?
Well, we actually have two different crises happening in different timescales. There is a crisis which is internal to the political system, which may or may not result in an impeachment. But this is sort of a manufactured
Rodrigo, how is she
crisis.
reacting? Just wrap us up here for this part of the show. How is she reacting? How's the administration reacting? Aha! Once again, this conversation has a meme. It's Rodrigo starts to speak, then Rodrigo stops speaking, and then Malika starts to speak. Malika, what do you have?
Quite a little teaser,
Yes.
so I know we'll get to it in the post-show, but I'll end with this from Rio Gringa. She says, it's not impossible, but the chain of secession doesn't have anyone who'd be a really viable replacement, picking up what we heard earlier, that there really isn't an alternative right now.
See, I love that every time we show something, Fabio actually leans right into his screen so he can read. Fabio, I need your help here. Lean right in, Fabio. This is the pointer.
That's because I'm using my cell phone, so the screen is really small.
This is from Pointer. We were looking at some headlines from Sunday's protest. What does this one say, Fabio?
On the streets, focus on Lula, Dilma, and Moro. Moro is Sergio Moro, the main judge.
All right, so from Sunday's newspapers again, what does this one say?
This is the name of the newspaper, like Londrina News.
And then here, 20,000 protests against Dilma and PT, the Workers' Party. Okay, in Londrina. All right, my Portuguese is getting so much better. That's thanks to
which is a
Fabio, Bruno,
middle-sized city
and Rodrigo.
in the state of Paraná.
So many more stories here to actually get our teeth stuck into off the back of the protest in Brazil. We'll be doing that online at stream.aljazeera.com. Hopefully you'll be able to make it. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Stream's online only post show. I'm Femi OK. We're talking about Brazil's political upheaval. Had a few technical issues. Let's see how we do with the wrap up. So, Bruno, your final thought for us as an international audience, if we're trying to unpack this, where are we right now? Where are we today with these protests? We've got rallies for your president, protests against your president. Explain to us where are we going next? What next?
That's a very hard one to answer you.
Yeah, that's why I posed it.
Actually, I agree a lot with what Rodrigo was saying. We are living the end of a relatively stable political situation that it's been going on since the end of the dictatorship. I believe that the stability will come from an agreement that the government is doing now with the Congress, which is the place where the stability can be done now, because the political forces among this society are either too weak or they don't have a proper political representation now. I think there is a gap between what people think and feel on the streets in a myriad ways and the political representation that is happening now. So I think the solution will be, in a way, a Brazilian austerity plan.
Interesting.
Unfortunately.
All right, Fabio, final thoughts for today's conversation.
I think it's pretty clear that now we're living through troubled times in Brazil, involving a political crisis that also has a component of economic crisis. And the last time we had such a serious situation in Brazil, a president was impeached. This is something that was not mentioned.
Well, that was back in 1992, right?
Exactly. That was President Fernando Collor de Mello, who, oddly enough, is now part of the basis of the government. And when he was impeached, a new period of reforms happened in Brazil, and the whole political and economic stability that came about in the following years was brought about by this period of reforms. I think now it's time for a new political consensus around a different government and around a government that may be able to acquire its legitimacy through reforms or even through new elections. I don't think new elections are on the plan right now. I think impeachment, the vice president would take over. But if it ends up being necessary, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
But isn't the vice president being investigated as well?
No. Most of his party members
as well, being investigated, full stop.
But he's not.
Yeah. All right, Rodrigo, thank you for your patience. Technology 1, Rodrigo 0. I'll give you that as a football score there. Let's try one more last time, Rodrigo. Just your final thoughts on why this is an important time in Brazil's history.
Well, I'll try to finish my train of thought from earlier. Where I was going with that was basically the old sense of the polarization between left and right doesn't make sense right now. That isn't to say that there isn't a right and there isn't a left.
All right. Rodrigo, thank you. Technology 2, Rodrigo 0. Rodrigo Nunes, Bruno Tortura, Fabio Osterman, thank you for bearing with us for our technical difficulties. Wow, that was amazing. I think I'd rather be president of Brazil than be the host of this show today. That's saying something. Thank you.
Don't say that.
My friends.
We are more stable here than the connection.
You are most definitely more stable in Brazil right now than this studio. Malika Bilal, I'm going to lie down. What do you have?
I will close us off with Bernardo.
Right.
We asked, how can the government regain the trust of its people and kind of send the people back home off of the streets? Bernardo says, actually, it's too late for that. Those calling for impeachment will never be won over, and those who supported the ruling party will feel alienated by a turn to the right.
Fabio, Bruno, Rodrigo, I owe you a drink when I'm next in Brazil. I owe you dinner, I think. Thank you so much for being part of this stream. We'll see you all online. Have a great weekend. Take care.